I returned home early on a drizzly Friday evening, expecting the quiet comfort of routine. Instead, I stumbled upon a crumpled invitation tucked into an envelope that wasn't meant for me, a secret weekend getaway planned by my wife. My heart pounded as I pieced together the fragments of evidence scattered in hushed whispers and suspicious texts. The invitation promised laughter, sunshine, and clandestine meetings. But nothing prepared me for the gut-wrenching truth: her lover wasn't a stranger at all, it was my own best friend. For years, I had believed that my marriage was the safe harbor in which I anchored my hopes and dreams. My wife and I had built a life together, marked by shared routines, intimate secrets, and a mutual trust that I thought was unassailable. I prided myself on being her unwavering support and confidant, often turning to my best friend, let's call him Jason, for advice and camaraderie during both good times and bad. We were inseparable, having grown up together, shared countless adventures, and forged an unbreakable bond that, I naively believed, would withstand any storm. But that storm, as I was about to learn, was more destructive than I could ever imagine. It all began one gloomy Friday evening. I had been on a business trip and returned home unexpectedly early, hoping to surprise my wife with my arrival. The house was dark and quiet, a bit too quiet for a home that usually buzzed with the energy of our daily lives. I fumbled for the light switch and, as the warm glow filled the living room, I noticed an envelope on the coffee table. At first, I thought it might be a bill or a flyer, but something about its elegant script caught my attention. Curiosity and a sense of foreboding mingled as I opened it, revealing a handwritten invitation for a weekend getaway. The invitation was clearly not meant for me. It contained details of a luxury resort, a weekend of sun, laughter, and secret rendezvous, details that felt both alluring and ominous. I sat there, frozen in disbelief, as my mind raced to piece together what I'd just discovered. My wife, the woman I trusted with every fiber of my being, had been planning a secret weekend trip. The thought was enough to send shockwaves through my heart, but I wasn't prepared for what came next. Determined to understand the full picture, I began searching for clues. I scoured her purse, her desk drawers, and even the browser history on our shared computer. The deeper I dug, the more I uncovered: a series of cryptic messages, photos of unfamiliar hotel lobbies, and travel itineraries that painted a clear, damning picture. My wife was not only sneaking away, but she was spending the weekend with someone she was far too intimate with to be a mere friend. The shock of betrayal gave way to a mounting dread that gnawed at me relentlessly. I recalled the late nights when I had listened to her soft whispers on the phone, the excuses about just catching up with old friends, and the furtive glances when I was in the room. Every memory now bore the mark of deception. I felt as if the foundation of my life, built on trust, love, and the promise of partnership, was crumbling into dust. Yet, the true knife to my heart was yet to be revealed. In the quiet desperation of that night, as I scrolled through the photos on her phone that I had found carelessly left on the kitchen counter, I recognized a familiar face. It was Jason, my best friend, the person I had confided in through every trial and tribulation. The realization hit me like a bolt of lightning. The one person I had always believed to be my brother-in-arms had been the one with whom she shared her secret weekend escapade. I remember feeling as though the floor had vanished beneath me. The betrayal wasn't just from my wife, it was a double blow from someone I trusted implicitly. I could hardly breathe as the realization sank in. The woman I loved had chosen a secret lover, and that lover was none other than my best friend. Emotions exploded in a torrent of anger, grief, and utter disbelief. I slammed the phone shut, my hands shaking uncontrollably as I tried to make sense of the catastrophic betrayal. The invitation, the photos, the messages, they all painted a damning picture of infidelity that went far beyond what I could have ever suspected. For the remainder of that agonizing night, I sat in the silence of our dimly lit home, my thoughts swirling in a chaotic storm. I questioned everything: my self-worth, the integrity of our relationship, and the nature of the trust one had placed in the two people who meant the most to me. How could I have been so blind? Were there signs I had ignored, red flags I had dismissed as trivial? Each thought was a searing reminder of the life I had believed in, now turned to ash by deception. Tears streamed down my face as I clutched that invitation, a cruel symbol of my shattered world, and I resolved to confront the truth, no matter how painful it might be. I knew that the coming days would force me to face the most devastating questions of my life. Would I be able to confront my wife without losing myself in the process? How could I ever rebuild trust in the face of such profound betrayal? And most haunting of all, how could I ever reconcile the man I thought I knew with the actions of someone who had been my closest friend? In that dark, quiet night, I made a silent vow: I would no longer allow myself to be defined by this betrayal. I would confront it, seek answers, and reclaim my dignity. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with painful confrontations and heart-wrenching truths, but I knew I had to begin the journey toward understanding, toward rediscovering who I was and what I truly deserved. As the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, I gathered my courage. I collected the evidence, organized the photos, and saved every message like a shard of a broken mirror. I knew that when the time came, I would have to face my wife, and likely Jason, to unearth the truth behind this devastating affair. I wasn't sure how the conversation would unfold, whether it would bring resolution or further heartbreak, but I had reached a point where silence was no longer an option. Standing at the threshold of that new day, I felt the enormity of the moment, a moment that would redefine everything I thought I knew about love, trust, and loyalty. I was a man who had given everything, only to have it all turn to betrayal in an instant. And yet, within the depths of my despair, a fierce determination began to grow, a resolve to confront the darkness, to reclaim my self-respect, and to rebuild a future that was based not on the lies of the past, but on the unyielding truth of who I am. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the world and the promise of a new beginning intermingling in that silent, fragile moment. The journey ahead would be painful and uncertain, but I was ready to face it head-on, armed with the evidence of betrayal, the fire of righteous anger, and the unshakable belief that I deserved better. I vowed to seek the truth, no matter how harsh it might be, and to forge a new path defined by honesty and self-worth. In the aftermath of that shattering discovery, I found myself spiraling into a maelstrom of raw emotion and disillusionment. The hours, then days, blurred into an endless stretch of agonizing self-reflection and bitter anger. I wandered through our silent home as if in a dream, every shadow a reminder of the trust I'd once placed in both my wife and my best friend. The evidence of their betrayal was overwhelming, a series of photos, secret text messages, and hotel receipts that painted a damning picture of a clandestine weekend trip. I had come home expecting nothing more than a quiet evening, and instead, I was confronted with the truth. My wife had not only deceived me, she had chosen my own best friend to be her lover. The initial shock hit me like a tidal wave, leaving me numb and disoriented. I sat in the dark of our living room, the only light coming from the screen of my phone as I scrolled through the incriminating evidence again and again, each message a fresh stab in my heart. My mind raced, how could they both betray me like this? I replayed countless memories, moments of camaraderie with Jason, my confidant since childhood, and the tender promises my wife had once made to me. I felt as though every joyous memory had been tainted by deceit. I struggled to comprehend how the people I trusted most could have orchestrated such a betrayal so meticulously, leaving no trace of their duplicity except for the hidden phone and its damning digital trail. 4 days, I retreated into a self-imposed exile, locking myself away in my room and trying to make sense of the chaos. I couldn't face the world outside, every familiar sound and face became a painful reminder of what I had lost. I barely slept, my nights spent in a tortured dialogue with myself. I questioned every decision I had ever made, wondering if I had been so blinded by love that I had ignored the subtle signs, the furtive glances, the unexplained absences, the hushed conversations when I was out of the room. Each recollection was like a shard of glass, cutting deeper into the fabric of my soul. In those long, agonizing hours, I began to document everything in a journal, hoping that the act of writing would somehow stitch together the fragments of my shattered identity. I wrote feverishly about the moment I discovered the hidden phone, the cold precision of each text message, and the heart-wrenching realization that my best friend, the one person I had trusted implicitly, was intimately entwined in this treachery. I described the cascade of emotions that washed over me, bitter anger, crushing despair, and a deep, gnawing sense of betrayal. Every line of ink on those pages was a testament to the life I thought I knew, now irrevocably altered by lies. Yet amid the darkness of my anguish, I began to notice a subtle, persistent stirring, a flicker of defiance that refused to be smothered by the tidal wave of betrayal. It started as a quiet whisper in my mind, a reminder that I was not merely a victim of circumstances but a person with the strength to rise above them. In the raw solitude of those early mornings, as I sat by my window watching the pale light of dawn break through the night, I found myself formulating a plan. The shock of discovery had left me broken, but it also ignited a fierce resolve to reclaim my dignity and rebuild my life on my own terms. I began to take small, deliberate steps to regain control. First, I locked down the evidence. I saved every photo, every text message, every receipt to an external drive. I needed to preserve this record not only as proof of their betrayal but as a foundation upon which I could build my next move. Each digital file was a piece of a puzzle that I was determined to solve, a roadmap that would eventually lead me to a confrontation with the people who had shattered my trust. At the same time, I reached out to a few trusted friends who had always been there for me, though I was terrified of how they might react to the revelation. In hushed, tearful conversations over coffee and late-night phone calls, I confessed what I had discovered. Their responses were a mix of sympathy, shock, and outrage. One friend, Michael, couldn't hold back his disbelief. "I can't believe Jason would do this, your best friend, of all people." His words, though laced with anger, also offered a sense of solidarity. They reminded me that I wasn't alone in this ordeal and that there were people who believed in my worth, even if the ones I trusted the most had betrayed me. I also turned to online support forums, places where others had shared their own stories of betrayal and heartache. In the anonymity of the digital world, I found solace in the shared experiences of strangers who had faced infidelity and deception. Their words resonated deeply, reinforcing a truth I was beginning to accept: that sometimes, the people we hold closest can shatter our world, and yet, from that wreckage, we can forge a new, stronger identity. Their stories were raw and painful, but they were also imbued with hope, a hope that one day, I too would rise above the hurt and reclaim my sense of self. As the initial shock began to wane, the long hours of introspection gave way to a more structured plan. I decided that I needed to confront my wife, not in a moment of uncontrolled fury, but with a clear mind and a firm resolve to understand the full truth behind her betrayal. I spent days rehearsing what I would say, writing down every question that burned inside me. When did this affair begin? How long had Jason been involved? Was there any part of our marriage that was genuine, or was everything a facade built on lies? I knew that facing her would be one of the hardest things I'd ever do, but I also knew that I couldn't move forward without confronting the reality of our broken relationship. I prepared for the confrontation like a soldier readying for battle. I organized my thoughts into a list, each bullet point representing a shard of the truth that I needed to recover. I printed out the most damning pieces of evidence: the text messages, the photos from the getaway, and even the itinerary that detailed the secret trip. Each page was a stark reminder of my betrayal, but also a stepping stone toward reclaiming my autonomy. I placed these documents in a folder, knowing that they would serve as both a record of the deception and a tool for the difficult conversation to come. During this time, I found my nights filled with a tumult of emotions: anguish, anger, regret, and even a small, defiant hope that I could emerge from this nightmare stronger. I began to incorporate small acts of self-care into my routine. I would go for long walks in the cool night air, letting the rhythmic sound of my footsteps give me solace and clarity. I returned to the music I had once loved, picking up my guitar and letting the melodies soothe the raw edges of my heart. Every chord, every lyric I strummed, became a declaration of defiance against the betrayal that had so completely upended my world. Simultaneously, I made a decision to consult a therapist, Dr. Linda Carter, who specialized in relationship traumas and personal recovery. Our sessions were raw and painful, filled with tears and the unfiltered truth of my inner turmoil. "You need to understand that this betrayal, as devastating as it is, does not define you," Dr. Carter told me during one session, her voice a gentle reminder of the strength I had forgotten. "It is a chapter in your life, not the entire story. Your worth is measured by your resilience, your capacity to love, and your ability to rebuild." Her words began to sow seeds of a new self, a self that, while scarred by pain, was also capable of transformation. I also immersed myself in reading and learning. I devoured books on personal empowerment and narratives of individuals who had overcome infidelity and betrayal. Their stories, often filled with both despair and incredible resilience, resonated with me. I began to understand that the journey ahead would be long, fraught with setbacks and heartache, but also filled with the potential for renewal. I realized that my pain could be the catalyst for a profound transformation, a rebirth from the ashes of deception, where I would redefine my own identity and reclaim the narrative of my life. Every day, as I worked through my grief and planned the confrontation, I felt the weight of the betrayal slowly begin to lift. I started to view the hidden phone and its damning contents not only as evidence of deception but as the impetus for a new beginning. I began to write a series of essays that detailed my journey, my love, my heartbreak, and my determination to face the truth. I even started sharing these essays on a private blog, and the responses from anonymous readers who had faced similar betrayals were a powerful affirmation that I was not alone, that my story was part of a larger tapestry of human resilience. Yet, as I prepared for the confrontation, the fear of what might happen was never far from my mind. I knew that my wife's reaction could range from explosive denial to tearful remorse, and that my best friend's betrayal would cut deeper than any wound I had ever experienced. The thought of confronting both the woman I once loved and the friend I had trusted completely left me trembling with uncertainty. I spent long hours rehearsing scenarios, trying to steel my heart for the storm that was coming. I wrote and rewrote what I would say, ensuring that my words would be both honest and resolute, a declaration of the pain I had endured and the strength I was determined to reclaim. Finally, after days of agonizing preparation, the moment of reckoning arrived. I returned home one late afternoon, the folder of evidence clutched tightly in my hand, my heart pounding as if it were trying to break free from my chest. The house was quiet, the atmosphere charged with the weight of unspoken truths. I knew that the conversation that awaited me would be one of the hardest of my life, a confrontation that would force me to look into the eyes of the woman I had once believed to be my soulmate and demand the answers I so desperately needed. As I stepped into the living room, I could feel the tension in the air. I placed the folder on the coffee table and sat down, my hands trembling as I waited for her to return from the kitchen. Every second stretched into an eternity. I rehearsed my opening words in my mind, determined to speak with clarity and resolve despite the maelstrom of emotions swirling inside me. I wanted to know everything. When had this secret affair begun? Why had she hidden it? And most painfully, how could she betray not only me but also our shared life with my best friend? Each question was a challenge, a call to reclaim the truth that had been buried under layers of lies. When she finally returned, her eyes fell on the folder, and for a moment, the world stood still. The look on her face was a mixture of shock, guilt, and something I couldn't quite decipher, perhaps fear. I took a deep breath, my voice steady despite the churning of my heart, and said, "We need to talk." And in that single sentence, the storm was unleashed, words, accusations, and tears spilled forth as the reality of our betrayal was laid bare. My voice trembled with both anger and heartbreak as I demanded to know how she could have done this, how she could have shared our lives with someone I had considered my closest friend. The confrontation that followed was a raw, painful exchange, a collision of emotions and shattered illusions. As she tried to explain, her voice wavering between regret and defiance, I felt the full force of my own pain rise within me. I listened as she spoke of loneliness, of feeling neglected, and of a misguided search for validation. But every word only deepened the betrayal. I saw in her eyes the reflection of the secrets I had unearthed, and I felt a profound sorrow for the life we had lost, one built on trust, hope, and shared dreams. In the midst of that tumultuous conversation, a realization began to crystallize in the chaos of our words. The betrayal was not just an act of infidelity, it was a fundamental breach of the vows and promises we had made. It was the culmination of years of hidden resentments, unspoken doubts, and a failure to truly see each other. And as I looked into her eyes, I knew that I could no longer remain tethered to a relationship built on lies. I made a silent, agonizing decision in that moment, a decision that would shatter any remnants of our shared past and force me to forge a new path forward, alone if necessary. That day, as the confrontation reached its heartbreaking crescendo and the full extent of our broken promises was laid bare, I felt a strange, liberating clarity. I realized that while the pain was indescribable, it also presented me with an opportunity, a chance to rebuild my life, to rediscover who I truly was, and to reclaim my future on my own terms. In the painful aftermath of our exchange, I gathered the shattered pieces of my identity, vowing that I would no longer let this betrayal define me. I would learn from it, grow stronger, and eventually, find a way to rebuild a life that honored my true worth. The journey that followed was neither swift nor easy. There were countless days filled with grief and anger, moments when the scars of betrayal threatened to overwhelm me. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, I began to find my footing. I threw myself into work with a renewed sense of purpose, channeling my pain into creative projects and innovative ideas. Every small success at the office was a defiant act of self-affirmation, a quiet declaration that I was more than the sum of my heartbreak. I also continued to seek solace in my writing, sharing my evolving story on my blog and in long, introspective journal entries. The support from readers, from strangers who had faced their own betrayals, bolstered my resolve and reminded me that healing was possible, even if the path was paved with pain. I attended therapy, where each session peeled back another layer of hurt and taught me to view my scars as symbols of survival rather than markers of defeat. Your pain is a part of you, but it doesn't define you, my therapist would say, and gradually, I began to believe it. As the months passed, I started to envision a future that was distinctly mine, a future where I would rebuild my identity, my relationships, and my sense of purpose without the shadows of deception looming over me. I began to set concrete goals for my personal and professional life, investing in my education, pursuing new career opportunities, and even exploring creative ventures that had long been relegated to the back burner. I realized that I had the power to redefine my life, to transform the wreckage of betrayal into a stepping stone toward a new beginning. The journey was arduous, marked by setbacks and moments of raw vulnerability, but with each new day, I felt a surge of determination rising within me, a conviction that I was not defined by the lies of my past, but by the resilience of my spirit. Now, as I sit here and reflect on the path I have taken, from the moment I discovered the hidden phone to the heart-wrenching confrontation that shattered our marriage, I am filled with a profound sense of both loss and hope. I have learned that the truth, however painful, is the first step toward healing. I am beginning to see that even the deepest betrayals can pave the way for a rebirth, a chance to reclaim my identity, rebuild my dreams, and forge a future defined by my own choices. Though the scars of that night will always remain, I now understand that they are not a measure of my worth, but rather a testament to the strength I have found in adversity. Every tear shed, every moment of despair, has contributed to the person I am today, a person who is unafraid to seek the truth, to face the darkness, and to emerge stronger on the other side. I am ready to embrace this new chapter, to let go of the false promises of the past, and to build a life that celebrates my resilience, my creativity, and my unyielding determination to live authentically. With every sunrise, I take one more step toward a future that is entirely my own, a future where I am no longer defined by the betrayal of those I once trusted, but by the endless possibilities that lie ahead. I stand here today, battered but unbroken, ready to reclaim my destiny and to write the next chapter of my life, a chapter that is filled with hope, courage, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. I woke one morning to a silence so heavy it felt like the calm before an inevitable storm, a silence that whispered of finality and demanded resolution. After weeks of sleepless nights and relentless inner turmoil, I had reached the point where I could no longer live in the shadow of betrayal. The evidence was undeniable: my wife's secret weekend trip, the incriminating texts, the photos that showed her in a world with someone I had once trusted as my best friend. Every memory of our shared past, every promise I believed in, now lay shattered at my feet. The pain was as raw as it was unyielding, a truth that had transformed my life into a chaotic tapestry of anger, sorrow, and disbelief. But beneath the layers of devastation, a fierce resolve had been born, a determination to confront the lies, to reclaim my identity, and to rebuild a future defined by my own truth. For weeks, I had let the burden of that discovery gnaw at me. I'd wandered through our home like a ghost, every room echoing with the quiet reminders of a life that had been built on trust and devotion. I replayed the moment over and over, the way I found the hidden phone in her purse, the flood of messages, and then the crushing realization that her lover was none other than Jason, my best friend. It was a betrayal so profound it seemed to steal the very air from my lungs. Yet, even in the midst of that despair, I began to understand that I could no longer be a passive witness to my own unraveling. I had to act, not merely as a reaction to the betrayal, but as a reclaiming of the self I'd lost. That morning, as the pale light of dawn broke through the curtains of my small apartment, I sat at my desk with trembling hands and a heart battered by betrayal. I spread out every piece of evidence on the table before me, screenshots of text messages, photos from her secret trip, and even digital copies of emails that confirmed the extent of her deceit. Every file was a painful reminder of what I had lost, yet also a tool in the battle for my future. I resolved that today, I would confront the truth head-on. I would not allow the hurt to define me. Instead, I would use it as the catalyst for reclaiming my life. The hours that followed were a blur of preparation and internal reckoning. I knew that a confrontation was inevitable, and I needed to gather every ounce of my strength. I rehearsed my words silently, each sentence a promise to myself that I would no longer be silenced by the lies. I reached out to a few trusted friends for advice, and though their voices trembled with sympathy, they also reminded me that I was worth fighting for. "You deserve to know the whole truth, and you deserve respect," one of them said, his tone firm yet gentle. Their support lent me the courage I desperately needed. By midday, I had arranged to meet my wife in a quiet, neutral space, a small cafe tucked away on a side street, away from prying eyes and the memories of our former life together. The air was cool and crisp, and the sound of soft jazz mingled with the murmur of quiet conversations around us. I arrived early, my heart hammering in my chest, each tick of the clock intensifying my resolve. I reviewed my notes one last time, each bullet point a reminder of what I needed to say: the betrayal, the deception, and the unyielding pain of discovering that the love I had trusted was built on lies. When she arrived, she was visibly tense, her eyes darting around as if seeking an escape from the inevitable. We sat down at a small table in the corner, and the silence between us was thick with unspoken words. I took a deep breath and began, my voice steady but laced with raw emotion. "I found the phone," I said softly, letting the words hang in the air. Her face paled, and for a moment, she said nothing. Then I continued, recounting every detail, the hidden messages, the photos, the undeniable proof that she had been on that secret weekend trip. I mentioned the name I saw repeatedly in the messages, the one I had once trusted as my best friend. Every word was a shard of truth that cut through the veneer of our shared past. Her eyes filled with tears, and she tried to speak, but I pressed on. "How could you let me believe in our life together while you were living a lie?" The cafe around us seemed to fade away as all that existed was the painful intensity of the moment. I could feel the anger, the sorrow, and the betrayal swirling in my voice, each sentence a plea for answers. I demanded to know when it had started, how long it had gone on, and why Jason. I wanted every detail laid bare, no more secrets, no more half-truths. I wanted to understand how our love had become so fractured, how the foundation we had built together could crumble so effortlessly. As the conversation unfolded, emotions erupted on both sides. She wept softly, her words coming out in stuttered apologies and fragmented explanations. She claimed it had been a moment of weakness, a lapse in judgment, and that she never intended to hurt me. But the truth was that intention was irrelevant, the pain was real, and the betrayal was irrefutable. My voice rose, a mixture of anguish and anger, as I demanded accountability for the lies that had poisoned our marriage. In that cafe, surrounded by the quiet hum of life continuing around us, our private nightmare played out in full, raw, unfiltered, and devastatingly real. For what felt like an eternity, we sat there, she in tears, and I in a state of tumultuous shock, my heart aching with every word. It was then that I realized that the confrontation, as excruciating as it was, marked a turning point. I could no longer cling to the remnants of the life we had built together, nor could I let the betrayal define who I was. I knew that I had to make a choice, to either try and salvage what was left of our relationship or to walk away and rebuild my life from the ground up. In that pivotal moment, as the conversation reached its painful crescendo, I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, a hint of regret, perhaps even a recognition of the irreversible damage that had been done. It was a silent admission that she, too, was trapped in a web of her own making, that the choices she had made had consequences that neither of us could escape. That realization, though it didn't erase the hurt, imbued me with a strange clarity. I understood that forgiveness, if it were ever to be considered, would have to come with accountability. I couldn't simply forget what had happened, I had to face it head-on and decide what the future would hold. The weight of that conversation lingered long after we parted ways. I left the cafe with a heavy heart and a mind swirling with questions and painful insights. The drive home was a blur of headlights and passing streetlights, each moment punctuating the magnitude of the betrayal. I knew that my life would never be the same. I felt both a profound loss for the relationship that had been shattered and a burgeoning sense of liberation, the realization that I now had a chance to redefine my identity, to rebuild my self-worth, and to reclaim my future on my own terms. Back in the solitude of my apartment, I poured every emotion into my journal once again. This time, my writing was not merely an outpouring of grief, but a manifesto of defiance and renewal. I documented the confrontation in painstaking detail, the harsh words, the tearful admissions, and the silent promises of a future that would be free from deception. I began to map out the steps I would take to rebuild my life, to focus on my career, to nurture my creativity, and to reclaim the independence that had been stolen from me. I set tangible goals, attending therapy sessions regularly, reconnecting with supportive friends, and even exploring new opportunities for personal growth. Each plan, each step forward, was a beacon of hope in the darkness of my shattered world. In the following weeks, I slowly began to see a change in myself. The searing pain of betrayal gradually softened, replaced by a steady determination to move forward. I immersed myself in work, channeling my heartbreak into creative projects that allowed me to express the depth of my emotions. I reconnected with old passions, reading, music, and art, that had once filled my life with joy. Each small victory, every moment of genuine laughter and progress, was a defiant act of self-reclamation, a quiet rebellion against the betrayal that had threatened to consume me. I also continued to explore the boundaries of forgiveness, not as an excuse for her actions, but as a means to liberate myself from the chains of resentment. In my therapy sessions, I learned that true forgiveness was not about forgetting the past, but about freeing myself from the grip of it. Forgiveness, Dr. Carter reminded me one day, is a gift you give yourself. It allows you to move forward without the weight of old pain dragging you down. Slowly, I began to understand that while the betrayal would always be a part of my story, it did not have to define my future. I could honor the lessons of the past without being shackled by them. As the months turned into a new chapter of my life, I set forth on a journey of self-discovery that transcended the pain of the betrayal. I traveled to places I had never been, met new people who shared their own stories of overcoming heartbreak, and even began writing a book, a raw, unfiltered account of my journey from the depths of despair to the brink of renewal. The process of writing the book was cathartic, a way for me to sift through the layers of my emotions and emerge with a clearer sense of who I was meant to be. I wanted to create something lasting, a testament to the idea that even in the face of the most profound betrayal, one could rise, rebuild, and find a path to happiness. Now, as I sit here reflecting on the turbulent path that led me from that shattering confrontation to this place of newfound clarity, I realize that my identity is no longer defined by the betrayal I endured, but by the strength I discovered in its wake. Every tear, every moment of anger, every painful word exchanged during that fateful confrontation has contributed to a mosaic of resilience that now shapes my very being. I have learned that the journey of healing is not linear, but a series of peaks and valleys, each setback an opportunity to grow stronger, each triumph a beacon of hope. In the final analysis, I have come to understand that the betrayal, as devastating as it was, has also given me a chance to reclaim my future. I am no longer the man who silently bore the weight of deceit. I am a man reborn from the ashes of broken trust, determined to forge a new path defined by truth, independence, and self-respect. I have begun to rebuild my life piece by piece, cherishing every small victory, and embracing every moment of growth as a step toward a future that is unequivocally mine. With the pain of the past etched into my memory as a reminder of what I have overcome, I now look to the horizon with cautious optimism. I am ready to confront whatever challenges lie ahead, to continue the journey of self-discovery and healing that I have embarked upon. My story is one of profound loss and even greater resilience, a journey that has taught me that even when everything is torn apart, the pieces can be gathered, reassembled, and transformed into a mosaic of strength and hope. As the light of a new day spills into my apartment, I stand at the threshold of a future unburdened by deception. I have reclaimed my self-worth, and I will no longer let the echoes of betrayal define me. Every sunrise is a testament to the power of the human spirit to rise again, to rebuild, and to flourish in the face of adversity. I am ready to write the next chapter of my life, a chapter filled with honest reflection, determined growth, and the unyielding belief that my destiny is mine to create.